begin tonight by asking you a simple question. I'm not exactly sure how to phrase it, but something along these lines. As you look back over your life, where did you see yourself? Where did you find yourself, your true self, soul? And to whom were you grateful for that? To whom were you grateful for? Because it's a strange thing. I mean, much as I love solitude and someday I hope to disappear in the forest, I've drawn back all the time to realizing that I can't be myself without others. Does that sound crazy? I cannot be myself without others. I wish that wasn't true some ways, just ornery enough to want to just be myself without anybody else. But I think God has a great sense of humor and says, I'm going to put in you a burning desire for community, and you're going to learn a whole hell of a lot in the process. Hopefully I am. So the question is, as you look back over your life, where did you find yourself? See yourself. You know, like the poet says, I think it's Derek Walcott, where he says, in love after love, he says, the day will come when, with elation, you will welcome yourself. And I can't remember the exact words beyond that. But standing in your own mirror, at your own door, you will smile and say, sit, eat, feast on your life. That's the kind of encounter I'm talking about, where you see yourself, discover, embrace who you really are. For me, that happened a lot in Ireland. It was a gift. It was a great gift. Never expected it. Growing up in the inner city of South Buffalo, my ambition was to become a truck driver and a rock and roll musician and drive all around the country. That was it. It was a good ambition, I thought. I never got to drive a truck, but I had traveled a lot doing music. So, 50-50. It worked out pretty well. But in Ireland, I met and experienced people who changed my life. And some of them I never actually met, like in the same room, but I encountered them through their music. And I'm just going to tell you some of their names. One of them just recently died, like 2 days ago. And her name is Moya Brennan. Moya Brennan. And she was the lead singer for a band called Clannad. She was incredible. She had a voice, if you ever heard like the theme from Harry's Game, or the music from, what's it called? Daniel Day-Lewis starred in it, The Last Mohican, I think. Is that it? Something like that. Anyway, the music, the voice, her voice was incredible. Another person who died recently, Sinead O'Connor. Incredible person, musician, voice, singer. Bold as brass, standing up for herself and for Ireland. Another person to listen to. Third person, Dolores O'Riordan. Dolores O'Riordan, who led a band called the Cranberries. Some of you are old enough to remember the Cranberries. She turned out to sing this song called Zombie, which was the most viewed video song, I think, in human history. Because her voice, there it is again, the voice took on like supernatural qualities. And the power of the music just swept that voice to depths and heights that I'm not sure anybody's ever come close to. Her song, Zombie, was written in response to what's called the Troubles in Ireland, which came to a close with the Good Friday Agreement. It was 1997 or 8. And she wrote the song called Zombie. How can people be so cruel and heartless and all of this? And she called them zombies, basically. And she asked us all to figure out what's going on inside of us so we don't become zombies. It's a great song. If you've not seen it on YouTube, it's amazing. All of them died recently. And all of them cried out with that powerful Irish, indigenous, primal voice. So I thought tonight we would just do a little Irish crying out. It's the sound is O home, O home, O-C-H-O-N-E, O home. Do you say that with me? O home, right? O home. And it's the kind of sound that when my mom's husband died at the age of 94, she threw herself on his coffin in the winter outside when he was being buried, and she unleashed a sound that was similar to that. Oh home. It can be used in many ways. It's a sound of longing, of love, of loss, deep desire. And sometimes it's oh home no. Oh home no. I like the no bit because it has a kind of like fist in the air feel. No, this can't be happening. This is not right. This is not good. You know, there's a few things happening today that I think oh home no are really, really it's needed. So tonight we'll just start with this. I'll sing a line to you, just sing it right back. It's actually like, well, I'll sing a line to you. And then at a certain point in the song, we switch from Irish, O home, to a Christian context where we call out Kyrie, Kyrie. It's actually a Greek word, Kyrie, Lord, eleison, have mercy. Christe, eleison, Christ have mercy. And again, there's some things in the world today that we really need to call out for. Stop it, mercy, please. Eilish. Now, Anna, if you tell me you were thinking of that name before I said it, I'd be really freaked out. Okay. Eilish is an Irish name, woman's name. And I met Eilish over in Ireland, and she was an older woman. I don't even know if she's still living. We haven't stayed in touch. A couple of years ago, she was still around. Anyway, she sat down at the table once with me and some others over lunch in the cafeteria there at the college, and she began to speak. I mean, you gotta understand when I say speak, I mean, it's more of a recitation of poetry that she had internalized since she was a little girl. Indigenous. I say indigenous because the Irish are indigenous to Ireland. And she began to speak out. I went out to the hazel wood because a fire was in my head. And then she went on and cut and peeled a hazel wand and hooked a berry to a thread. And when white moths were on the wing and moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in a stream and caught a little silver trout. When I had laid it on the floor, I went to blow the fire aflame, but something rustled on the floor, and someone called me by my name. It had become a glimmering girl with apple blossom in her hair, who called me by my name and ran and faded through the brightening air. Though I am old with wandering through hollow lands and hilly lands, I will find out where she has gone, and kiss her lips and take her hands, and walk among long dappled grass, and pluck till time and times are done the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun. And when I heard her speak this beautiful poem by W.B. Yeats, I was enchanted. And she said to me, I dare you. I just dare you to learn that poem. Well, that's all it took. And that was, what, 2008, 9, something like that. And ever since, well, I took her up on the challenge, and I thanked her for the challenge. And ever since, that poem, along with others, have been floating around in me, speaking to me when I'm at my lowest point, or just when I need a friend. And the poems are there. She mentored me. If you've never been mentored, you haven't lived. It was totally unexpected, but this little Irish Buddette appeared, and she said, I dare you. Are you willing to take up the challenge? Mentoring. Such a beautiful thing. It's typically done by someone who's older, who presents something to you that you haven't been able or willing to do yourself. In this case, it was something beautiful, right? But I had no use for poetry prior to meeting Eilish. No, I didn't know why I was living in Ireland, but some part of me did, and there it was, Eilish, saying, drink deeply from the wells of Irish poetry. So I hope that each of us has experienced some mentoring in our life. We're never too old to be mentored, even for just a moment. It can happen. The Irish called it anam cara, when a soul friend sees into your soul and says what they say. In this case, it was, I dare you. There it was. So Tonight, I'm going to try and be brief about this, but I'm going to juxtapose two stories, and then you do with it what you want. We don't have time to really talk about it. But I find great value in juxtaposing two stories from different traditions and just bringing them together like, a book, a page and a page, part of the same book. It's a rare practice, in my experience, that you take a story from this tradition and that tradition, and you bring them together, and you see what they are saying, each about the other story, but then about yourself, because that's what the stories are for, right? To speak to you about you. So, hang on, it's going to be a little ride here. First story. Once upon a time, Jesus was walking down the road with the boys in the band, and this wild woman came out of nowhere, and she said, "Jesus, I know who you are, help me." And he ignored her. He actually ignored her. And his students were even worse. They said, "Go away, you're bothering us." Now, if you want to see this story, it's in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 15. It's a story that most of the time, most churches will not touch. And you'll understand why in a moment. So first, this wild woman who's flying out of nowhere yells to Jesus, "I know who you are, help me." He gives her the cold shoulder. Doesn't say a blessed word to her. His students say, "Go away." Crazy person. She persists. And then finally, Jesus speaks to her. And you know what he says? This word gets really bad. The young rabbi speaks to the woman who's desperately in need of help. And he says to her, "I know my mission. It's not you." Can you imagine the nerve? She was a Gentile, by the way. You need to know that part. Jesus and the boys were Jewish. And he says to her, "I'm in touch with God. I know my mission. It's to the Jews. It's not to you." In effect, he was saying, "Go away." She did not. She persisted. This is an important feature in the life of Jesus. Very often it was a woman who told him who he was and what he needs to do. Because he didn't know. This is where I get into trouble in churches, because they like to think Jesus knows everything. Well, he didn't. Sorry. So in this story, Jesus didn't know. And he says, "I know my mission. I'm in touch with God. Go away." She persisted. Now this is where it gets really juicy. She then steps in front of Jesus, uses body language, right? Bows before him, and he cannot avoid her anymore. So then he throws an ethical argument at her. This is what he said. He said, "It's not right for me to give food to the dogs." Dogs was a not so nice term for Gentiles back then. So here he is throwing an ethical argument. First it was a theological one. I know my mission, God sent me. Then he says, it's not right, it's not ethical for me to give what I got to you, because you're not Jewish, you're a dog. He calls her a dog because he's part of the culture. That's what they did. At that point, she becomes like Perry Mason. I don't know the equivalent of today's lawyers. Who's a great lawyer today, celebrity or otherwise? Give me a lawyer.
Johnny Cochran.
Say it again, Johnny Cochran? Yeah, she becomes Johnny Cochran. And she says to him, "Yeah, right, I agree, young rabbi, but even the dogs get the crumbs that fall from the master's table." Boom, she's got him. He loses. And he ends up saying to her, "Wow, you really got faith. Whatever it is you want, it's done." And she says, "Thank you very much, it's about time." And she goes back. back and everything's well. Now, that story should be very disturbing. It is to me, always has been. I've worked with it for 20 years. What I'm going to suggest to you is read between the lines in a story like that. Enter the story. Remember our imagination? We got to keep those imagination caps on. Go into the story, see what is being said between the lines. The stories were never meant to be read. Okay? They were meant to be heard. It's an oral culture. And they were meant to ignite your imagination and evoke feelings from you. That's what the stories are about. So, let me just suggest, when you go into the story, what was the woman saying, in effect, about herself? This is where it gets psychologically revealing. What was she saying about herself? Any thoughts? Yeah.
That she could appreciate who Jesus was.
Absolutely. What else? This is where it gets really powerful, Teddy. What else was she saying? Because lots of people could appreciate who Jesus was, at least some people. But she was saying something that went against the grain. What was she saying about herself? I'll tell you what I see. She was saying, I am worthy. Because of Jesus' response to her, he was saying, in effect, you are not worthy of my attention. And he was willing to go on. But she countered it, like Johnny Copper, said, I am worthy. And the young rabbi eventually agreed. What else was she saying about Jesus in that moment? About Jesus. You started to touch on it today. She appreciated his mission, who he was, even more than he did. Because she said to him, in effect, your mission is bigger than what you think. It's not only to the Jewish people. It's to me, a Gentile, a dog. Right? Yeah? Now, viewed from another angle, what was Jesus saying back to her, between the lines? Can you imagine?
He was saying you're worthy
Yes.
because of your faith.
He was saying you are worthy. Right. You are worthy. And he was admitting he was wrong. I'm sorry, I was wrong.
I hear from her, I'm going to show you, you can learn, and him acknowledging, thank you, you taught me.
Yes. Yeah. He was thanking her for teaching him who he was in a bigger picture, because he was focused on the Jews. Okay? And he was saying, thank you for showing me who I am, and my mission is much broader than I thought. Think about the moment when Jesus' mom says to him at the wedding of Cana, right? Jesus says, I'm here to have a good time, Mom. And she says, more than that, son. The wine has run out. They need your help. And he said, it's not my time. I know, because, I'm Jesus. And I'm in touch with God. So don't bother me, Mom, back off. That's what he said to her. And she, being a wise mom, didn't argue with her son, but presented the circumstances, created the conditions under which he would be nudged to do what she knew it was time for him to do. Step out. Okay. Do it. Show the people, show the world who you are. Which he did. But it took a woman to kind of push him out the door. Over and over again. Where do you think Jesus learned to wash feet from? Remember? Before he washed feet on that Thursday, who washed his feet? It was a woman.
Yeah, the woman with the alabaster jar.
The woman with the alabaster jar of oil and her long hair that she dried his feet with.
Right.
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 So that's the story. It's a powerful story. If we get into it and allow it to get into us, it can change us. Now I want to just quickly juxtapose that story with another story, and if we want, we can talk about it tomorrow night. Here's the second story. Once upon a time, there was a fisherman who got up really early one morning to go fishing, and the tide had gone way, way out. So far out that he could walk across on the sand to a little island he had never seen before. That's important. Anytime in folklore, when you hear they had never seen it before, pay attention. So he had never seen this little island before. So he gathers up his nets and he goes walking out in the sand toward the island, and along the way he sees all kinds of yummy things in the sand, like edibles, shellfish, razorfish, all kinds of things. He arrives at the island, fills his nets up, works for hours. His nets are now full, overflowing. He's tired. He lies down, takes a nap. Big mistake. When he wakes up, the tide had come back. Now he's trapped on the island. He goes after what he thinks he wanted, and now he's trapped by what he thinks he wanted. So, he realizes this, and I'll make the best of it. It's getting dark now. Dark and darker. And when the moon was full and the moon was bright, he saw something he had never seen before. It was a herd of seals coming from the ocean, from the sea. Hundreds and hundreds of seals roaring, flapping up to the sand, onto the shore. Beautiful seals, black skin, shining under the full bright moon. And he was delighted. But it gets better. Because as these seals emerged from the sand, one by one, they shed their seal coat. And they became human beings. Isn't that the goal? As they emerged into humanness, the fisherman is now enchanted, more than delighted. He's enchanted. Wow, human beings. What a concept. And he watched them all throughout the night, being human, under the full bright moon. And they were together, these human beings, in three ways. They were together in the wonder, the splendor, and the joy of each other. The wonder, the splendor, and the joy of each other's company. We've all experienced that at various points in our lives. That's what it's about. In the morning, one by one, the seals go down, the humans, seals, go down to the shore, put their seal coat back over their shoulders, become seals, and dive into the ocean. All except for one. She lay on a rock asleep, her seal coat next to her. Beginning to feel what this story is about? This is an ancient story. Very, very old. Way before Christianity. In that moment, the fisherman spots her without thinking. Okay, this fisherman didn't take Tim's mindfulness class. Without thinking, he runs over to where she is and takes her seal coat. It's a very old story. He begins to walk away, with her skin. She wakes up. She sees the fisherman. Instinctively, she follows him. She goes back to his house where she becomes the woman in his life. She has no memory of her former life in the sea. None. Years pass. They have children. Every night, she tucks her children in bed, combs their hair just so. And when the moon is full and the moon is bright, she goes down to the ocean and unleashes a song of yearning, of longing, of desire that cannot be put into words. It's a sigh, it's a sound, it's a melody that's from another world. And then she goes back into the house and does what needs to be done. One night, or one day rather, she's making bread. She's at the tabletop and she's doing the thing with bread, the dough and everything. And something happens. Because something always happens. A single drop from the thatched roof falls on the tabletop. A drop of seal oil, for that is where the husband hid her seal coat. Still with me? Teddy, you still with me? Okay. A single drop of seal oil falls on the tabletop. She sees it. She doesn't deny it. She doesn't pretend it doesn't exist. She notices it. She reaches out with her finger and touches the seal oil on the tabletop, brings it up to her nose. It smells good. She takes another drop, brings it to her tongue, and it tastes, in the words of Genesis, very good. And in that moment, she's transformed. She knows who she is. She knows what she must do. Her whole being is flooded with memory of her life in the sea, her true life. And at that moment, she stands up. She takes her seal coat from the thatched roof. She walks outside. The kids and the husband are away that day. And she walks down to the sea. Over her shoulders, the seal coat goes. She becomes seal again and dives into the water to find her seal family. That night, the fishermen and the kids come back and they realize that she's gone. Totally gone, not coming back. And they're heartbroken, of course. The story doesn't end quite yet. The story ends like this. On the nights when the moon is full and the moon is bright, on those nights, the fisherman comes home to find the children tucked in bed, just like she used to tuck them in bed, and their hair combed, just like she used to comb their hair. You got the idea? Somehow or other, she returns on those nights when the moon is full and bright, and she tucks her children in bed and she combs their hair. The fisherman, having been through a lot, now takes up the song, and he goes down to the sea and sings a song without words, a song of longing, of desire, a song from the heart. And that's how the story ends. We don't have time to go into the story tonight, but maybe tomorrow night if you want to talk about it. I would just say this, that story and the story of the woman coming out of nowhere, the wild woman at Jesus, are parallel stories. And in the story of the seal, sometimes called the Selkie, is the name, you can actually see this story on YouTube in a children's version called The Secret of Rowan Inish. Oh, kids love it. Families love it. And then the adult version, by adult I just mean there's violence in it, you don't want kids to see it, with Colin Farrell, Irish actor. He plays the fisherman, who literally fishes out a woman from the sea. And that's all I'm going to tell you about that. But the story for me has been with me for many, many years. It always speaks to me in some ways different each time. But one of the things the story says to me is that I am called, and I believe we all are, to hold worlds together. To hold the world of the past with the present and even the future together. To hold internal worlds together so we're not fragmented. To hold the pain, the suffering together with the consolation and the joy. Together. Worlds together. In lots more ways as well. Our unconscious, our conscious. We could go on and describe more different kinds of worlds. Does that make sense? It's an ancient story from human beings, perhaps from seals, I don't know. But to hold worlds together, you know, the world of the animals, the worlds of the humans, the worlds of trees and rivers, so on. To hold them lovingly together. That's, for me, a huge part of the story. But there's much more. So, we'll close with a song. If you want to talk about the stories, we can tomorrow night if you wish. One of the genres of song in Ireland is lullaby. And it's a song of protection. Not just to sing a child to sleep, but also to protect us, as well as children, from anything that's harmful. So this little lullaby, it's an ancient melody. The sounds, it's not really words, it's more vocables or vocables. Ooh la loo la la. Would you say that with me? Ooh la loo la la. It's that kind of sound. There's 5 lines. I'll sing it once and then join me if you would. Ooh la loo. We give you thanks for your great love for each one of us and everyone, everywhere. Help us to hear the ancient stories, the beautiful, the powerful, the sweet, the good stories that stir in us life, love. May we hear them and be swept away by them, as far out to sea. May it be so.